So, Kieran, you know how we're friends and everything?
Really? We've made it to this part in the relationship, have we?
And you know how I'm the godfather to your parakeet?
Yeah, the cockatiel. Yep, sure.
Yes.
Why not?
I need to thank you for throwing me under the bus this week with our overexposed sky topic.
I think you may have thrown yourself under the bus with that one, but I'm glad I could share that opinion around.
I think we may have built up this role of like good cop, bad cop scenario where like I'm the one that says the controversial things and you just keep quiet.
I'm just a fence sitter, am I?
It seems that way.
I don't want to displease anyone.
No, seemingly not. So, episode 5.
Is it that much already?
It is. It's like a full hand of episodes.
Yes, it is. It is.
Maybe even a full foot. 5 toes, 5 fingers, however you want to count them.
It's, 5. Half a 10.
Half of 10. Big week again this week. Big episode.
It is a big episode.
New sponsor and a big one. One of my favourite brands within the photography world.
Yeah, I was quite happy to see these guys get on board with Project RAWcast. It's very nice to have them joining us for the ride.
Well, we better tell everybody who it actually is.
All right, would you like to tell?
Yes, I would. So fstoppers.com, one of my absolute favourite websites. Incredible source of information, incredible source of photography content, and also an amazing source for photography tutorials. Some of the absolute best photography tutorials you will find anywhere online. The quality of this content is just simply amazing.
Yeah, they've got a range of tutorials from landscape to portraits, as well as architecture, and even some tutorials on Lightroom. The production values in these is fantastic. I myself have watched all the cityscape photography tutorial with Elia Locardi, and it was just amazing.
These tutorials, if you've never seen them before, the effort that these guys make to create these tutorials is phenomenal. Even just for example, the Cityscape Astrophotography course, they travel the world to produce this content. Some of these videos are 15 hours plus in terms of production quality, and it's incredible quality as well. So this particular prize is worth $299 US. It'll give you access to a single tutorial on of your topic from F-Stoppers, and we really hope this one is actually going to inspire somebody out there to really continue and to learn to create some great content. As I say, F-Stoppers is just such a fantastic website and a great source of information and content. So very, very happy to have them on board this week and supporting us.
So one listener will be able to choose whichever tutorial they want from their website. We'll run a competition shall we run it for 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think so. I think this one's worth 2 weeks, definitely. The same as we've done every week so far. Submitting landscape images via the Project RAWcast hashtag, and also mentioning us within the caption of your post. It must be a new post from the time we announce the competition during the week, and it will be a 2-week competition. So we will be drawing this particular one on Sunday, the 13th of November at 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time.
And this is also open to our international listeners as well. I know we've got some listeners from the US, Canada, and the UK, or anywhere else in the world. All you need to be able to do is download quite a few gigabytes, because these tutorials have many hours of footage as well as the raw files for some of them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, and again, thank you for F-Stoppers for this one. This is a huge one for whoever wins this. I mean, you're going to walk away with some incredible tips from this. I think anybody would be happy to win this one.
Should we have it open for not just landscape photos, but other ones as well?
I think so. Yeah, why not? Let's do this for not just landscape photos as well. So any photo, submit a photo on our hashtag that makes us smile. It can be a portrait, it can be a landscape photo, it can be a food photo, it can be anything, because this particular set of tutorials, you'll have your own choice of tutorials and kind of cover whatever topic you like.
Cool. And you may have noticed that we haven't quite announced the winner from our competition with Creative for Life, or our 3 winners, but we will be announcing them later today, because today is Sunday morning.
For sure. Like, just keep an eye on our Instagram feed. We'll announce all 3 winners of that particular competition. There'll be 3 individual posts. We'll announce first, second, and third prize for the prints, for the 40-inch, 30-inch, and 20-inch print. So keep an eye on our Instagram feed on Sunday for today at 6 p.m, and we'll be announcing those winners. So,
and again, a big thank you to Creative for Life for getting on board with us and offering these prints to our listeners. We really appreciate it, and we know that they're just going to love having their images up on their wall or whatever they decide to do with them.
Definitely. All right, so let's talk some inspiration here, Mr. Stone.
Okay.
I've got a question for you.
All right.
Now, you can't answer me for this, okay? I know you want to, but you can't. We don't count. I want to know 3 people within the photography world, or anywhere, wherever it is. I don't care where it comes from, but obviously it's photography related. 3 people who inspire you to continue to improve your photography, or 3 people who've inspired you to get to where you are today. I think this might be a great topic for people. I mean, everybody kind of seeks inspiration from somewhere. I'd love to know where you seek your inspiration from. You are an inspiration to many others out there. Please don't get a big head from that, but you are. So
my head can't get any bigger.
No, it can't. It can't. So give us a bit of an insight into who inspires you, or who has inspired you in the photography industry.
Well, because I can't say you for all 3 answers, since you've not allowed me to do that, then I guess I'll move on to my 4th, 5th, and 6th place, I guess. These change over time, and I guess I've got lots of inspiration. It comes from many different places, but a few names would stand out for me, and some of them may be well-known, others maybe not so well-known. Quite a few Australians in my list as well, because Australians just seem to take really good landscape photos and like to travel around. But the first name I'd mention is going to be Peter Lick. I guess a lot of people would probably have different things to say about Peter Lick, but I love his work. Its quality of photos are fantastic, and just how well he's done for himself is amazing as well. And just seeing someone succeed that well in photography is inspirational, and it sets a benchmark of how far you can actually go with taking photos.
Well, I agree with you with this one. Peter Lick's a great example of this, not just the quality of his photography, but also his business model as well. I mean, the guy has done incredibly well financially out of photography. I've personally walked into one of his galleries when he was open in Port Douglas, and I was just blown away by the gallery itself. The actual gallery, forgetting the stuff that was hanging on the wall, was just works of art.
Yeah, I walked into one of his galleries in Las Vegas, and that was the first I'd seen of his work, and seeing those images was, your eyes just open and you're amazed by just how they look printed out large and on a wall. And it probably was one of the times where I thought, this is something that I'd love to be able to do.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think most photographers around the world would love to make the kind of money that Peter Lick makes from his, but he's got his sales process down to an art form as well, not just his photography, but his sales process as well. So, I mean, that is an inspiration to many people, I think.
Well, how about we take it in turns? So, and save me just prattling on for ages, who's someone that inspires you?
All right. My number one inspiration. Now, I'll give a bit of background here. I draw a lot of inspiration from a lot of places, particularly from Instagram. I consume so much content that it's not just the quality of the content, but it's also the people that inspire me as well. So, I mean, quality of content is one thing, but there's a lot of people out there who can produce great content, So, Daniel Tran, for me, is absolutely an inspiration. Daniel Tran here in Australia is, I personally believe, one of Australia's leading landscape and travel photographers. I think he probably doesn't know that himself yet. The guy is 21 years old. Now, to see the dedication and commitment and focus that he has within his photography or towards his photography, for me, is amazing. When I was 21 years old, the only thing I wanted to do was see how many days I could stay awake straight partying, So I probably actually don't remember much of my 21 and 22 and 23-year-old life, but to see somebody so committed and dedicated to his art. It's incredible. Now I've shot with him. I've stood next to him. He's amazing. I look at this guy and I can just see somebody in 10 years' time who is going to be the absolute leader, not just in Australia but potentially around the world in terms of landscape and travel photography.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there. I mean, we're not just saying that he's doing well for his age. He's doing well for any age. Any age is doing well. And I've only met him briefly, and it would have been good to chat with him a bit longer. But I'd have to agree, his work is fantastic. And I see his photos and think I'd love to take photos like that as well. For
sure. And for me, it's the attitude as well towards that. He's an incredibly gifted photographer. Like I stood again next to him earlier this year on one particular shoot we were on and watched him create this one shot during Vivid in Sydney. I was looking at him going, what are you shooting? What are you even looking at here? I can't tell. It was a particular shot of a reflection in this dome lights that were in the botanical or in the gardens down near Circular Quay. When I saw the shot come out, it just blew my mind. I was like, okay, all right. I was just amazed by it. It was a phenomenal shot, and this particular shot got featured everywhere on Instagram. As I say, he's not just a great photographer, but he's also got a fantastic attitude towards driving himself and trying to achieve something, and that's something that I think is an inspiration not just to me, but potentially to many people as well.
Cool.
So moving along. Your turn again.
My turn. My next one isn't actually a landscape photographer at all. It's a black and white portrait photographer mainly, and that's Peter Coulson, another Australian, works mainly out of Melbourne, and I've actually been on one of his portrait portfolio workshops where we go to his studio and he teaches about studio lighting, natural lighting, and how to actually develop a portrait portfolio. The way he works with the people around him, his models, is just a fantastic guy and takes phenomenal images as well. Just being on that workshop and listening to what he had to say and his explanations, and then going and taking photos and looking at the back of my camera and thinking, wow, I've actually taken this photo. This is my shot. Yeah, it was just great to see how he does his work. I always check out everything that he's doing, and yeah, if you're into portrait photography or you're wanting to look at some great portrait photos, then definitely check out Peter Coulson.
Definitely, I think, and this is a great example of maybe just stepping outside of your own personal comfort zone as well, where this type of photography, I know that you're a landscape photographer, and I also know how highly you speak of Peter Coulson. I've had this conversation many times with you about how it's kind of helped you to learn so much more, not just in techniques of lighting and portraiture, but also your editing process as well.
All right, on to you.
All right, number 2 for me, Crystal Hutchinson, or Midnight Photography. If you've ever seen this woman's content, it is phenomenal. For me, I've never seen anything that matches the quality of her photography, and not just the quality of any single image, but the consistency of quality within the Australian landscape market. She is incredibly gifted, incredibly talented, also great at teaching, great at explaining things, great at the workshop side of things. And for me, particularly some of her waterfall shots, I look at them and just dream about producing content of that quality. It's incredible.
You do like your waterfalls.
I do like my waterfalls, but it's not just that. I mean, even some of her recent New Zealand content, it's just phenomenal. Like the lighting, the everything about it. The quality of the editing, the overall finish of the images, it is top class quality. There's in my opinion, as I say, nothing like it in the Australian market. There's quite, how do we say, I would think they're grand scenes where they're really big scenes, like I tend to focus and tighten my lens zooms in on particular parts of an image, or I like to get up really close to something when I'm shooting it. A lot of Crystal's content is just massive big scenes, massive mountains, so much detail, and it just the expanses of the images themselves when I look at them, it's just phenomenal. And I would love to produce content like that. Yes, thank you, Crystal, for inspiring me in my photography, and I think many other people would feel the same way about her content as well.
Yeah, she definitely has images, and when having a look on Instagram, I see one of hers come up, and you do want to be able to like it more than once.
I do like them more than once. I tend to switch accounts and just like them as many times as I can for her, because it's just amazing content. It really, really, truly is.
I guess another one I've got, that someone whose work I've seen, and every time I see this person's work, it's just amazing, and that's Leah Kennedy. She's got different images, from landscape images to travel portraits, as well as some composites and sort of more digital artwork. The quality and precision to her work is amazing, and I just love seeing some of her aerial work as well.
I agree with you there. Some of those aerial shots are just simply stunning. I love looking at them as well.
If you get a chance to head over to her website and check out her work, it's just, yeah, it blows me away every time I look at it.
Yeah, definitely. That's again, there's some incredibly gifted photographers there. I mean, we've just listed some of the absolute best within the Australian market, I personally believe. My number 3, and this definitely comes very much from a personal connection that I have with this person, and so Dietmar Callis, or Lake of Tranquility, who is one of my absolute closest friends, as well as professional colleagues that I've worked with. When I met Dietmar, we could have picked up each other's photography bag, and we had identical gear. You know, he could have taken my bag home and he probably wouldn't have even noticed. So we didn't even know each other. We literally had the identical gear, down to the filters that we used, the lenses that we used, everything that we used. I think we were very much at the same stage of our photography life when we met, which was just, we were trying to learn as much as we possibly could. We've now pretty much travelled Tasmania together. We've travelled other parts of Australia together. We spent a lot of time together. And there's something that really about Dietmar that inspires me, is this constant quest to continue improving his photography. He's not looking to be the best in the world. He's not looking to win competitions, but what he wants is to feel happy in his own content. And that in itself, to me, is really inspirational. We've actually driven each other to succeed. You know, that's something that I will always and forever be thankful for in knowing Dietmar, is what he has actually made me try to achieve in myself as well. And that's for me, it's not the quality of his content, but it's his attitude and the absolute drive for him to continue to always improve. And that's, I think anybody out there could take a lot from that.
Yeah, and I was lucky enough to meet Dietmar when I was down in Tasmania last, and yeah, he's a great guy. I was very happy to meet him and travel around and take photos with him, and love seeing his work when it comes up on Instagram as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, I mean, that's 3 each. I could probably name another 10, you know. I mean, just in terms of content, you think guys like Luke Charkey, Matt Donovan, even yourself, you've got some other guys out there that have inspired you.
Yeah, well, there's people like Daniel Corden, also some local ones. Sarah Hatton does some great work.
Absolutely.
Adding Atamimi as well.
Definitely.
And yeah, I mean, if you want ideas of our inspiration, just, I guess, have a look at the people we're following and who we go over and check out, because yeah, there's lots of people out there, and I kind of feel bad that we can't name them all, but
that's it. I know. I could, as I say, Scott John Photography, the guys from Salty Wings. We could literally sit here all day. There's so much incredible content out there. So for me, my inspiration probably comes a bit more from my personal connection with the people, more so than just the quality of photography, because there's so much incredible photography to be consumed if you look at Instagram and just go through any of the major hashtags. Yeah, as I say, it's the people behind those accounts and people behind the cameras that really actually inspire me. Yeah,
well, I guess moving on from inspiration, and I guess still kind of an inspiration, and that would be, how do you make an image or make your images very, exclusive?
Yeah. You sell only one of them.
Yep. And how much would you sell it for?
Apparently, you put a $6.5 million price tag on it.
What kind of photo was this for?
Look, I think a few people out there may have heard of this and may not have heard, but the most expensive photo ever sold apparently has gone to Peter Lik. I mean, this is probably old news now, but $6.5 million for one image. That's I'm happy to sell one of my images for $6.5 million if anybody out there wants to buy one.
Yeah, that's for sure. I guess that's another reason why Peter Lik has been so successful in his business model, is being able to sell those images and the images he makes for running them as limited editions and having that air of being the best and exclusivity about it. And so for a collector to own the only image or the only print of this image that's ever going to be made is definitely appealing to people who are fans of his work or any major photographer out there.
For sure. Look, and as always, we'll put up a link within the episode guide on our website to this particular image. This image is actually a black and white conversion or a monochrome conversion of a color image of his. So the color image is called Ghost, and the black and white version of this image is called Phantom. Now, the Phantom version of this image is the one that's gone for $6.5 million to a private collector. $6.5 million US dollars, I must say, as well. So to a private collector.
That's about 10 billion Australian dollars, I think.
10 billion Australian, says the mathematical genius. Now, but this, I wonder if there's something. I mean, obviously there's something behind the business model here in terms of creating exclusivity. But once you've kind of built a brand around your photography, whether this is actually something that genuinely works. Do you market only 10 prints of an image? Do you kind of, are you confident enough in selling only 50 images and charging slightly more for a limited edition print run? This is quite an interesting business model within photography. I think this is not just photography, that this is part of a business model of. But I think, again, this with Peter Lik is his entire business model as well, that like he sells a certain amount of his prints at a price, and then once he's sold so many, the price of his prints increase.
Well, that is, I guess, common as well for limited editions, because as they become more exclusive, they become more desirable, or even, I guess, in the sense, more expensive, or there's a higher demand for them. So anything with a higher demand, the price goes up. What you're buying as well is meant to be seen as an investment, because there's only going to be a certain amount of these made. If you hold on to it for a number of years, and as everything happens, an artist dies or stops taking photos or starts moving on in different directions, you've got these representations of work that are exclusive, and there's not going to be any more of them made, so they are worth more, in a sense, the longer time goes on.
For sure. This again is a little bit controversial around this particular photographer that we're talking about. Is the whole point of creating exclusivity is potentially to have investment value, but my understanding is, and without actually going out with my own money and trying to buy one, that a lot of his images don't actually hold the resale value that you would expect as an investment. So if you were going to go and buy a Picasso and you pay $50 million for it today, and 10 years from now you would want to resell it, you could potentially sell it for $70 million. That is an investment. Okay, so I think we're, maybe looking at this, that if you're creating that exclusivity around your images, that they do have to be considered an investment. So there's been a lot of controversy around this particular topic. Are his images considered to really be an investment, or is it just a fantastic sales process that's allowed for this to happen? And is it a smart sales team that's allowed this photographer to make so much money? Yeah,
I think if I owned one of his prints, especially if I owned one that was $6.5 million, then in 20 years, 30 years time, it's probably going to go up in value, even just because of any controversy around his name.
Well, you hope so. You'd hope so. I mean, that's the whole point, I suppose. But something only holds as much value as somebody else is willing to pay for it, or as much as you're willing to pay for it. So to the collector, that image was worth $6.5 million. He may never want to sell it. I mean, that's, he may not consider it as an investment. It's all been done privately, apparently. There's no actual name of the person who's bought this particular image that's ever been released. So, I mean, something's only worth as much as you're willing to pay for it, but I'm sure there'd be many photographers out there who would love to sell an image for even 1/100th of that particular amount. I certainly would.
And it is a nice image. I'm just looking at it now, and the color version anyway, and it looks nice. It's well framed. It's got quite deep shadows and some blown out highlights as well on the ground, but it's a nice image. I don't have $6.5 million, but if that was up on my wall, I wouldn't scoff at it being there.
For sure. He's very much got a defined style, I think, really heavily saturated. I won't say heavily saturated, but very vibrant images. It very much a defined style, and I think if you walk into his art galleries, the lighting is very much set up to kind of show off that the color within the content, everything down to the print, on the acrylic face mounts, all those sort of things that are done to really make these images stand out. So it's definitely kind of different that a black and white image has sold for that sort of money, but at the same time, if there's only one of them in existence, remembering that there's probably a digital file floating around somewhere though, it's still a lot of money.
Well, I guess we could move on to one of our listener questions that is kind of related to this topic.
It sure is, yeah, definitely. So, Images by Carl on Instagram, so at images_by_Carl, has sent in a good question for us, which is, do you guys remember selling your first print, and would you change anything about it now? Go for it.
Go. I think I remember selling my first print. I won't count the time that I think my dad bought a few prints. That was very nice of him, but I guess my first print to someone I didn't know would have been a print of Mentone Pier, which was not quite a long exposure, but just a sunset shot of the old pier in Mentone. It wasn't one of my favorite photos, I suppose. I didn't think I'd ever really sell that image. It wasn't a bad image. I still liked it, but it wasn't one that I thought anyone would actually want. And so it was a surprise when someone contacted me and said that they wanted to buy it. Would I change anything about it? Probably not, because it was my photography at the time, and I could probably head down and maybe take a different photo, and maybe to be better technically, or I might be lucky with the weather and I might have a bit more drama or movement in it. But it was still a print sale, and I'm very happy to have sold it, and I guess I wouldn't change anything about it.
I kind of feel the same. So my first print sale, commercial print sale, was of a shot of the Cascade Brewery here in Hobart, with the first snow of the season sitting up on Mount Wellington. It's also it is still currently one of my most popular shots ever across social media. I sold a 36-inch print canvas of this, actually hand delivered it to the lady who bought it, hanging up on her wall. To this day, I still look at this image and I love it. Like it's one of my favorite images ever. It's completely, I won't say it's different to a lot of images I produce, but it's certainly not the long exposure style content that I would typically do. But this image, not just in print, is, for me, I've donated it across charities. I've given it for all sorts of purposes now, and I've still get requests quite often for use of it. And I look at it and I love this image. Like it's, to me, as you say, like it's your first print sale. It's almost like a trophy. It's like one of those things that you look back on and it's an achievement within your photography life. Even as my image editing skills have improved, I look at this image and still I wouldn't change anything about it. And yes, absolutely, I do remember my first print, and yes, I'm still very proud of this particular image.
I think one thing to think about when you're looking back on older photos as well is not whether you'd really change anything about it. You may not like the images that you used to take, and I guess whenever I look at my older pictures, I may not like them as much, but I wouldn't change them. If anything, they're just an example of where I've come from and where I am now and where I'm going to be later, as long as I keep improving my skills and keep learning and challenging myself.
Sure. Yeah, I think looking back through your image catalogue, it's almost like an evolution of you as a photographer as well. So even though your editing skills may have improved today, and you could probably take back, but your technique with your camera may have also improved greatly as well, you know. So and a perfect example of this for me is I used to make a habit of shooting in f/22 quite a lot, simply to make my exposure time longer. Obviously, narrowing your aperture kind of makes your exposure time longer, particularly when you're in waterfalls. But then for me, I learned things like diffraction is a massive issue with shooting at f/22 when I've got a 50 megapixel camera now. Those types of techniques have I've had to adapt and change them and really look at, you know, making sure that I'm shooting at f8 to f13 to get the sharpest image, all those sort of things. So I look back through my image catalog, and not only do I see what I edited like before, but I also see how I used to shoot as well and how I've evolved in my shooting with better techniques. So in many ways, I would actually prefer to go out and reshoot that image rather than go and change something that I've done in the past, just simply because I know today I'm a far better photographer than I was a year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago for sure. For me, looking back through my Lightroom catalogue here, it's almost an evolution of your photography as well.
And I guess on that point as well, where you say you want to reshoot things, it's the problem with the landscape photographer is that locations never drop off your list. They just reappear every now and again because you've learned something new and you want to try something different and head back to those locations and sort of reevaluate your portfolio and your style of shooting. Definitely.
It's also about, you're always looking for the best lighting conditions as well, you know. So sometimes you may have visited a scene where, you know, you're there in the middle of the day. Next time you go back, or you look for those opportunities for the early morning and late afternoon light. Photography in whole, as a whole, evolves over time. So in terms of the question that we were asked, I personally wouldn't change anything about the print. I've got very happy people with that image hanging on their wall. I've seen the look on their face as I delivered it and hung it on the wall. I personally wouldn't change anything about that shot.
Cool. Well, our next question comes from Matt Gerarda on Instagram as well. So that's at Matt Gerarda. And he says, on social media accounts, do you think it's better to mix up your photos or stick to a particular type?
This is a good one, Matt, because I'm a firm believer in one direction with this one, and this comes from my marketing background as well as with my clients. I believe staying niche focused allows you to really tap into your audience base and to deliver content that people expect. So if you're a landscape photographer, for me, and you all of a sudden start posting pictures of food on your account, or if you start posting family portraits on your account, you're mixing up the style of content, and people just, in many ways, don't get to relate to that, or just simply don't relate to that. I tend to find, though, with like lifestyle niches, lifestyle is such a broad niche market, or even travel, you know, like I just tend to find a much different engagement level across images when you step outside of your core niche or your core competency in photography. But at the same time, as a photographer, it's very important to continually strive to improve and to learn more about your photography as a whole. Challenging yourself to improve all the time is part of that, but I just don't necessarily think, if you want to really succeed in the social media market, and if you want to grow your audience base, that posting, say, a food shot when you normally post landscape shots, or posting a picture of a car when you normally post pictures of mountains, is necessarily a good thing for your account.
And I agree as well. Keeping it to a particular theme is necessary to sell your image, and that image being you and the brand that you represent. And I think if you're wanting to show a different side to your photography and you want to break out of that, there are options to either use stories to maybe show different work, or even creating a second account. A lot of people have either a behind the scenes account. I myself have created like an extras account, which I haven't been adding too much, but there's options for showing off other work that isn't directly on your main account if you're wanting to break out of your niche that you've made for yourself.
For sure. I think that this is something that's new within Instagram as well. Obviously, Instagram stories are only a couple of months old, so this opportunity for people to really show that behind the scenes content or something that's slightly different to what you would post to your feed is a huge thing. We've talked about this in a previous episode about what Instagram stories can be used for. There was a little movement when Instagram first allowed for multiple account logins, or to store multiple account logins, so it was easy to switch between accounts, where quite a lot of guys started to do behind the scenes accounts. For me, I kind of looked at that and thought, like, why have an account where you stick your crap photography, I suppose, in many ways, or stuff that, is not really the top-notch photography, the stuff that you just haven't really wanted to share in the past. Why even bother with that? It didn't make a lot of sense to me in terms of marketing. I think if your account's fully personal and you're just sharing stories with your family, it's probably not so important. But if you've got a brand, or if you've got a business, or if you're doing landscape photography, or if you're doing travel photography, influencer work, you're going out and you're doing tourism type jobs, or no matter what it is, if your account's for business, I think it's really important to really stay niche focused. As I say, the behind the scenes accounts never really made sense to me, and I think I'm really happy that Instagram introduced the Instagram stories simply to allow photographers to do this. It was a great move on Instagram to consume all that traffic away from Snapchat, but it's also a great opportunity for us as photographers to share a little bit more about us, but still try to stay a little bit niche focused. Don't go sharing stories where you're getting drunk or sitting there just drinking beer, where in your profile header on your account it says contact me for campaign opportunities. It just doesn't kind of work, I think, in that regard. But yeah, staying niche focused is really important. So
I think that's where, like before the stories, the behind the scenes accounts were a chance for those who were interested in what their favorite photographers or favorite Instagrammers were doing outside of those images, and just seeing more of a personal side of them. And you didn't have to follow those accounts, you didn't even have to look at them, but those people who were interested were able to see a bit more about the personal side. And yeah, now the stories have taken over, so the behind the scenes accounts tend to get used a bit less, or they've become a bit redundant and unnecessary, but they're still there to have a more permanent place to share different types of photography if that's what you're wanting to do.
Yeah, definitely. Again, as a person who is on Instagram quite a lot, like I spend so much time curating my feed in a particular way, or I've really focused on producing quality content. It's not the best in the world, or no two ways about it. But in terms of my photography, it's the best that I've done at that time. Whereas to go and create a second account to post stuff that I wouldn't post on my main feed just never really personally made sense to me. Again, I do understand why some people do it, but you spend so much time curating and giving the image of the top quality content and producing portfolio style content across your Instagram feed, that to go and have a second account where people can just go and look at your seconds or whatever just never really made sense to me. But Instagram stories is great in that regard, that it's only there for 24 hours, and it kind of gives you a different outlet for the type of content that could potentially be used in the regard to the question, which was obviously, do you think it's a good idea to mix up your photography style on your social media accounts? On your main feeds, I don't believe so, but stories gives you that opportunity to do so.
Well, thanks guys for those questions. They've been fantastic, and keep them coming. We'd love to hear what people want us to talk about or discuss. Check us out on our Instagram and send us all the questions that you have.
Sure. Look, something that I've actually seen got announced last week was Instagram has now included stories within the Explore feed. You may have noticed this, where at the top of the Explore feed you can now see stories of people who you weren't previously following, whereas when Stories was announced, you had to be following the person, or you had to visit their account and tap on their icon from their feed page. So now there's a way to discover other people and other types of other content from people on their stories across the Explore page. I'm actually finding this quite interesting, because I've again looking at the different types of content that people that I didn't even know about before are producing for their stories, and kind of discovering new ways. I think this is something that Instagram's done really well. That Snapchat never did, is allow discoverability of users. I think maybe the next move within this might also be that sponsored branded stories may start appearing at the top of the Explore page. That's my prediction for this particular thing. But have you noticed this yourself?
I have, and I think it's good to be able to see the people, I guess, their profile pictures come up as stories as well. Because you go to the Explore page and you see a whole bunch of photos, but unless you actually click on it, you don't know who they're associated to. And so seeing the images of the profile pictures and just being able to scroll through and have a look, you can say like, oh, I want to see what that person's up to, even if you might not be following them. And you don't have to scroll through a whole bunch of potentially random photos to find images or people that you're interested in.
I'm actually finding that I'm spending more time on stories than I am looking at people's feed now. Recently, there's been rumours floating around that this could actually be introducing lower engagement rates across people's feeds, because people kind of care more about that story consumption. I think Instagram obviously are very, very aware of this exact fact. So putting Instagram stories front and center within the feed now is something that I think, again, is a very smart move on them in keeping eyeballs on the page. But it's also something now to think about in terms of your success of your Instagram account, as it's not just your major feed, it's also the stories. So if you can kind of create decent quality content, or at least engage with people in a way that they expect you to do so through your story, it's just a great opportunity now for people to still continue to drive their audience base and to grow an audience, because you can now view the story and then follow that person. So
do you reckon with the success of the stories that Facebook might introduce something similar?
I think they have. They actually have. I don't know if you've noticed within the Facebook Messenger app, you can now do updates to your day. There's little ethereal posts which disappear after 24 hours of updates that you can actually do within the Facebook Messenger app. Now, I haven't looked into this as much as I probably should, but yeah, this is something that I saw pop up last week as well, that it's basically the same thing as an Instagram story now appearing at the top of the Messenger app. So and it's also that cross promotes onto your Facebook page as well, content that kind of disappears after a little while. Something I'll look into a little bit more over the next week. I'm not really sure how it would be relevant to the photography community, but it's just interesting to see within social media how that type of timed content that disappears after a certain period of time is really taking off now that Facebook and Instagram have started to absorb it. I think Snapchat maybe should have sold for $3 billion a couple of years ago when Facebook offered, because this is obviously keeping traffic away from that platform now. So
hopefully Instagram will have more of an influence on Facebook than the other way around.
Yeah, look, this morning I actually logged in, opened up my Instagram app. If you're following me, you may have seen this story, where I actually got a notice appear on Instagram, which actually said, manage your account from Facebook. Admins, editors, and moderators of your Facebook page can now create Instagram ads, edit account details, and reply to comments from your Facebook page. From my Tassiegrammer Facebook page, I can now actually reply to the comments that come on my Instagram feed. So this is obviously the rumors of Instagram becoming Facebook. This is just another move towards doing so. Facebook and Instagram essentially being integrated into one platform, and I personally don't like this. This is starting to see big moves towards just basically being, might as well call it Facetagram, because it's Instagram was successful for a reason, and now the monetization and the business model behind it that Facebook is introducing is obviously great for them and their shareholders, but I think it may be time for somebody else with some smart ideas to start building another platform that may not necessarily get consumed into Facebook anytime soon. So,
well, we've been talking for a while. How about we drone on a bit about drones, one of your favorite topics?
Mate, I love drones. Couple of big things that's happened in the past week. Firstly, zoom lenses on drones. So DJI have just released the ZenMoose 30 camera. Now, this particular camera is compatible with their Matrix model drone, one of their octocopter. This particular camera has introduced a 30 times optical zoom and a 180 times digital zoom into the camera.
That's huge.
It is very huge, and I think this, when in episode 1, we discussed that the next evolution in drones is absolutely the quality of the cameras and camera sensors. This is now something that a lot of people are going to fear, I believe. This particular camera at the moment is marketed for industrial uses, so things like power line inspections, those types of commercial purposes, but at the same time, there's probably nothing stopping a recreational user or somebody with enough money and a license to fly a Matrix to grab hold of one and attach it to a camera. I personally don't have anything against this, but I think the public and the general community as a whole are going to be quite interested in how this plays out, because the technology from these types of cameras will flow down into the recreational model drones. So I would love to fly one of these with one of these cameras attached.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, well, originally when drones came out, they had that fear of being watched, and now that you could be watched from even further away without even knowing it. So I have a few things to say.
I can't wait to see the news reports about this when they become readily available in the consumer market. That'll be quite an interesting one. But even just flowing on from this particular story, so Sweden just has literally banned the use of drones in public spaces. So Sweden's typically a very privacy-orientated country. They put privacy first, which is something that we just don't have, obviously, in Australia, the US, the UK, so forth. So they've actually banned drones within public space unless you have a particular license, which is the exact same license you require to operate a fixed public surveillance camera. So I'm going to assume these are incredibly tough to get in Sweden. So I could just imagine what they'd be thinking about cameras with 30 times zoom on them flying above them if they can't even, if they don't like the current level consumer cameras.
I'm just wondering when I guess law enforcement will start to get on board with cameras or drones such as this and start using them as surveillance tools, and you'll be wandering around and you'll see dozens of these things flying around, keeping an eye on the population, and probably somewhere where it's already can be a bit overwatched, somewhere like London is probably going to be one of the first places to really take this on board and start throwing drones up in the air to keep an eye on everyone and what they're doing.
For sure. Look, there's a story that I read a little while ago about this exact, what you're talking about there, is within Boston, where they're flying around small planes, which have basically got multiple cameras on them. Now, when they take these particular images from the cameras, we're talking about gigapixel quality images once they're all stitched together. These images can actually be, they're taken, they take 30, 40 frames a second, stitch them together, form a representation of a 40-kilometre radius, and use them for law enforcement. Now, these particular images and this particular system has actually been used to solve crime. Boston's a high crime rate area in the US. It's been used to solve murders. It's been used to solve car thefts. It's been used to solve all sorts of things. But the public didn't know that these planes were in the air, which kind of caused a bit of a backlash once the plane spotters and the hobbyist plane spotters actually started tracking registration numbers of planes to find out what they are, started taking photos of the planes and seeing the equipment that was actually attached underneath them. So in terms of law enforcement purposes, there is already that aerial surveillance stuff out there, and I'm sure, mate, we don't even know half of what there is. But once you start thinking about readily available drones potentially be doing it full time, it's pretty crazy to think about it.
There are very good reasons, as you said, good reasons to use these for things like power line inspections, where it takes the danger away from human lives, or even things that can be used by firefighters as well to get a better look at bushfires or anything like that, to be able to survey the land a bit better to help save lives of people going out there that do risk their lives. Anything that can be used for good, people are going to find negative ways to use it as well. And it's just like anything else, really. And limiting the use of it because of some potential.
Well, that's, the 1% of people that would do the wrong thing with this could potentially impact on all of the people that would do the right thing, which is kind of a sad thing. But at the same time, we discussed this in episode 1 about how potentially cameras could evolve quite quickly within drones, and it's the next area of drone technology that's going to improve. And this week we have it, the ZenMoose 30 camera. So,
still on the topic of cameras, what's happened with cameras on the internet?
Well, last week, pretty much starting Friday within Australia, there was massive distributed denial of service attacks around the internet. We're talking companies like Twitter, Spotify, CNN, many big brands around the world whose websites, actually not the websites, but the DNS provider, the system that basically routes traffic to and from websites.
Did this affect the Project RAWcast website?
It actually did. Yes, it did. I personally used the DNS provider, or one of the DNS providers that got hit by this, a company called DYN or DYN. Now, effectively what happened was we have what's known as the Internet of Things now, which are devices such as cameras, fridges, printers, all sorts of things that basically, if you can set it up to access the internet via your Wi-Fi router, so forth, were used to produce massive amounts of traffic and flooding this particular, there was a few of them, but this one particular DNS provider, and knocked out some of the biggest websites in the world. So cameras that were used, that are IP cameras, so they're connected to the internet. There's one particular provider has put their hand up and taken a lot of blame for this. It's a Chinese manufacturer. I can't actually pronounce their name, but we'll put up a link to the stories with this. They had an open password or a default password on their particular cameras. Now, it's possible to go into a port scan on the internet and do a search for cameras that are identifying themselves as being connected online. The people who are operating this particular set of malware and a botnet turned the cameras against the internet as a whole and took out a whole heap of websites. I find it really interesting that all of these particular devices and things that we just don't think about, and being used to flood traffic. Now we're talking upwards of 130 terabytes of traffic per second being thrown at some of these servers, and there's not a server or a network in the world that would be able to handle that type of traffic.
That's a lot of terabytes.
It is a lot of terabytes. I mean, that's per second as well. To have all of these devices now connected to the internet, the internet was never built for this. You've just got to think like the internet really now is one of the wonders of the world, in my opinion. It's connected people in ways that you could never have imagined when it was built. I mean, the things that you do online. Tell me what part of your daily life doesn't exist online now.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I guess our generation grew up with the start of the internet and all the trouble that we used to have to go to just to get 5 kilobytes a second kind of thing. And that's all forgotten now. Now you've got instant access to almost huge amounts of data is made so easily. We really take it for granted. And if you stop to think of just the amount of effort that's going into keeping this system running is phenomenal. And so when something goes wrong, people can't understand why, but it's a tremendous thing that we're all connected to.
For sure. Look, when the internet as we know it today was originally, I suppose, built, it was made within US universities and US military-based platforms. It was never envisaged as having cameras and how many mobile phones are there around the world today, and printers
and fridges,
speaker systems, televisions, boxes like Apple TV, those types of devices. It was never built for that purpose. So in terms of security and layer, all the stuff that happens to make it work, every single device that's connected to the internet now puts in some way, more traffic out there somewhere. So in the past week, some very, very crafty and very smart people have effectively turned those devices into a weapon to take down a whole heap of very important and highly trafficked websites, including Project RAWcast. So thank you for doing that, guys. We really appreciated that. It affected a large portion of my client base, where I actually had some of the web servers that I run through my company knocked out. So, but yeah, I just find it interesting that cameras can be used for this purpose.
Well, speaking of being able to access just awesome things on the internet, I think we'll just mention again our competition from F-Stoppers to win a tutorial of your choice, where you'll be able to download quite a few gigabytes of just amazing content and something that will hopefully drastically improve your photography and also maybe inspire you to get out there and keep taking lots of different shots.
Yeah, definitely. I think, again, anybody who wins this prize is going to learn something, definitely a lot of things about photography. So keep an eye on our social accounts. Make sure you're tagging us in your caption as well as hashtagging us, and we'll consider any of those images submitted. Again, Kieran, thank you for throwing me under a bus this week. I really appreciated it.
I'll try it again during the week. I'm sure you'll give me some fodder to work with.
No, mate, next time's my turn, I promise you. And also thank you to all of those people that we listed earlier in our conversation about the inspiration that they've given us, because I think anybody who loves photography draws inspiration from somewhere, and anybody that I know would draw inspiration from those people in some way. So thank you, guys, for inspiring us.
We will announce the winners of our Creative for Life competition later today at 6 p.m. So keep an eye on our Instagram feed for that.
Cool. Now, make sure you check out the episode guide on Project RAWcast this week, because all the links to the stories we've spoken about today will also be up on there, so you'll be able to go and check them out for yourself. So,
all right.
Cool. Sweet.
I guess that's a wrap for this week.
Cool. I'm going to go and plan throwing you under a bus somehow. So I'll talk to you later.
All right. Catch you later.